No one ever really looks at a waitress. Not properly. Not long enough to notice anything beyond the uniform, the polite smile, and the way she balances plates like it's second nature. To most people, she's just part of the background. Replaceable. Invisible. I got used to that feeling a long time ago. My name is Lila Carter. I'm 24 years old, and for the past 3 years, I've worked double shifts at a small restaurant just outside downtown. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even stable most days, but it paid the bills. Barely. Every morning started the same. Cheap coffee, a rushed walk to work, and a silent reminder to myself to just get through the day. Smile, serve, don't argue. That was the job. That was my life. Most customers didn't even notice me. Some didn't bother looking up from their phones. Others snapped their fingers like I was some kind of service button. I learned not to take it personally. People only respect what they think matters. And I didn't matter. At least, that's what they thought. That evening started like any other. Busy. Loud. The kind of shift where you don't have time to think, only move. Orders piling up, glasses clinking, voices overlapping. And then he walked in. You could always tell when someone important entered the room. Not because of what they wore, though that helped, but because of how everyone else reacted. Conversations slowed. Heads turned. Even the manager straightened his posture. He looked out of place in our restaurant. Too polished, too confident. The kind of man who didn't belong in a place like this. "Table for one," he said calmly. His voice carried authority. Not loud, but controlled. Like he was used to being heard. I grabbed a menu and walked over. "Right this way," I said, keeping my tone professional. For a brief second, his eyes met mine. And something about that look made me pause. Not in a dramatic way, just enough to notice. But I brushed it off. People looked at me all the time. It didn't mean anything. I seated him, handed him the menu, and turned to leave. "Wait," he said. I stopped. "Yes? What's your name?" It was a simple question, but customers didn't usually ask that. Not like this. "Lila," I replied. He nodded slightly, like that answer meant more to him than it should have. "Thank you, Lila." I walked away, trying not to overthink it. But something about that moment stayed with me. The rest of the evening moved quickly. Tables filled, orders rushed out, tips counted and forgotten. But I kept noticing him, sitting there, watching quietly. Not in a creepy way, just observing. Like he was waiting for something, or someone. When his food arrived, he barely touched it. Just took a few bites, then pushed the plate aside. Instead, he kept looking around the restaurant, at the people, at the staff, and occasionally, at me. By the time I brought the check, I was starting to feel uneasy. "Is everything all right?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "Everything is exactly how I expected." That answer didn't make me feel better. He placed cash on the table. More than enough. Way more than the bill. "Keep the change," he added. I glanced down. It wasn't just a generous tip. It was excessive. "You don't have to—" "I know," he interrupted calmly. "I want to." Again, that tone. Controlled. Certain. Like everything he did had a reason behind it. I nodded and stepped back. "Thank you." But as I turned to leave, he spoke again. "You've been working here long?" I hesitated. "A few years." "And before that?" The question caught me off guard. "Just other jobs," I said. He studied my face for a moment. Not judging, not smiling. Just thinking. Then he nodded slowly. "Of course," he said quietly. I didn't know why, but something about that made my chest tighten. like he knew something I didn't. He stood up, adjusted his coat, and walked toward the exit. No rush, no hesitation. Just calm, measured steps. Right before he left, he stopped, turned slightly, and looked at me one more time. Not like a customer, not like a stranger. For a moment, I couldn't react. His words didn't make sense, like my mind refused to accept them. My daughter. The phrase echoed in my head. Chuzhaya I nevozможная одновременно, even though I understood every word. You've got the wrong person, I said finally, taking a step back. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. But he didn't move, didn't argue, just kept looking at me the same way he had in the restaurant. I thought so too, he said calmly, at first. Then why are you here? He paused, choosing his words carefully. Because I've been looking for someone for a very long time. Something about that made my chest tighten. This didn't feel strange anymore. It felt serious. I don't know what you think you found, but you're mistaken, I said. I don't have family like that. I grew up alone. Not alone, he corrected quietly. I frowned. You don't know anything about me. He tilted his head slightly. I know more than you think. That made me tense up instantly. Look, I said, trying to end this. It's late. I need to go. I turned, ready to walk away, but his voice stopped me again. Your mother's name was Elena. I froze. Slowly, I turned back. How do you know that? He didn't smile, didn't hesitate. Because I knew her, he said. My heart started beating faster. Lots of people knew her, I replied quickly. That doesn't mean anything. Not like I did, he said quietly. The silence between us grew heavier. I stared at him, trying to figure out if he was lying or not. Who are you? I finally asked. He took a step closer, but stopped at a respectful distance. My name is Victor Hale, he said. And if I'm right, then you deserve to know the truth. The truth. For some reason, that word already felt exhausting. Then start talking, I said. He nodded. 24 years ago, I was in a relationship with a woman named Elena Carter, he began. It wasn't public. It couldn't be. At the time, my life was complicated. Convenient, I muttered. He ignored that. When she told me she was pregnant, everything changed. I wanted to take responsibility. I offered to support her, to be part of the child's life. I crossed my arms. And let me guess, she said no? He nodded slowly. She disappeared, he continued. Changed her number. Moved away. I tried to find her. For years. I let out a short, humorless laugh. People always say that, I said. It sounds nice. Doesn't make it true. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. Then look at this, he said. I hesitated, but curiosity won. I took the folder and opened it. Inside were documents, old, carefully preserved, and a photograph. My mother, younger, smiling, and next to her, him. My fingers tightened slightly around the paper. That doesn't prove anything, I said quickly, closing the folder. But something inside me had already shifted. He was watching my reaction closely. There's more, he said. I didn't respond. Hospital records, dates, locations, everything lines up, he added. Stop, I said sharply, because with every word he spoke, it started to feel real, and I wasn't ready for that. I'm not asking you to believe me right now, he said calmly. I'm asking you to consider the possibility. I shook my head. Why now? Why show up after all these years? He looked at me for a long moment before answering. Because I only recently found you, he said, and because time is something we don't always have as much of as we think. That answer felt heavier than it should have. What is that supposed to mean? I asked. Another pause. Nothing you need to worry about tonight, he said. I didn't like that. Not at all. Everything about this situation felt like I was being pulled into something I didn't understand. I don't know you, I said. And you don't get to just walk into my life and say something like that and expect me to believe it. I don't expect that, he replied. Not yet. Silence again. The street felt colder now. Quieter. Like the world had stepped back to let this moment happen. He reached into his pocket again and pulled out a small card. My number, he said, holding it out. Take your time. Think about it. Verify everything I told you. I stared at the card for a second before taking it. My hand brushed his briefly, and for some reason, that made everything feel even more real. If I'm wrong, he continued, you lose nothing. And if you're right? I asked quietly. He looked at me in a way that was completely different from before. Not confident, not controlled, just honest. Then everything changes. My grip tightened around the card, because deep down, a part of me was already starting to wonder, what if he wasn't lying? What if my entire life was built on something I never knew was missing?